The Campbell Mansion is very important to the history of Bethany for a number of reasons. In the first place, of course, it was the residence of Alexander Campbell and quite a number of members of his family, including the last Campbell to live in the building was his 10th daughter, Decima, and she died in 1920. Well, let's go in, shall we? And to our right is the oldest section of the house that was built, as I mentioned, in 1797 by Campbell's father-in-law, John Brown, and given to Campbell and his new wife shortly after they were married. We are now in the master bedroom of the Campbell Mansion, which was part of the addition that was added in 1818, 1819. Also, you see the grandfather clock standing across the way. That was presented to Campbell for keeping track of time during when the times of classes and so on for the Buffalo Seminary. This became the dining room, and you will notice that it's quite a long table. And that's because, as we mentioned, not only did Campbell have a large family, he actually had 14 children by 2 wives, but again, he was a very sought-after individual, and so there were often guests here who would come sometimes and stay for months at a time. To our right, on through that passageway, you go through what was called the dog trot and into the kitchen. That was added as well at this time. The dog trot essentially is just a covered passageway to separate the kitchen from the main house, because of course the fires in the kitchen were dangerous in those days, and this was a way of separating that aspect of it. Also the heat as well. If you go into the kitchen, you will see the main cooking hearth, but if you move around to the back, there are 2 warming bays that were also used as part of the process. Off the dining room to the far end is the entrance to the final addition to the mansion, Stranger's Hall. 3 of the walls are covered with a very interesting French wallpaper which tells the tale of Telemachus. The 4th wall, however, has a different pattern on it because there was a fire and that portion was destroyed, and so the only thing they could find to match about the same color was a pattern which depicts cadets on the plain at West Point. Behind this room, the parlor, there are, the Stranger's Hall parlor, there are 2 guest bedrooms and giant 4-poster beds, and this is where the guests would take their rest. Let us go upstairs and take a look at the rooms that are part of that half of the house. This was used as a dormitory for the boys originally for the Buffalo Seminary until the main addition was added a year or so later. This final room is called the Barclay room, or because it houses the Barclay exhibit. Decima Campbell, the last of Campbell's daughters, the 10th one, married a man named Barclay, and his family were missionaries and government emissaries for the United States government in the Mediterranean in the course of the 19th century. And so when she and her husband came back to the United States and lived here, they brought many artifacts from their travels in the Middle East. The cemetery across the road and up the pathway is known as God's Acre. It is surrounded by a huge flagstone wall, which until quite recently was a formidable barrier for people as well as the animals it was designed to keep out, especially cattle and so on. Within God's Acre are buried many of the most important people in the history of Bethany College, beginning, of course, most importantly, with Alexander Campbell himself, and a number of his children, his wives, and so on. But in addition to that, as you stroll through God's Acre, you will see names that are still familiar to current students because there are buildings on campus named for these people. Woolry, Kirkpatrick, the Greshams. It's my understanding that all tenured professors have the privilege of being invited to choose God's Acre as their final resting place. I, for example, will have mine there when the time comes. So, I hope you've enjoyed the tour of the mansion. We hope that in better times you will be able to come here and experience the aura of the place. It is important for people to be present where history itself was made. And we hope that when, in good time, the COVID crisis comes to an end, and once again we can open the campus to visitors and the mansion itself, we do hope that you will arrange to come here to Bethany and see the mansion, the campus for yourself, and to take advantage of the archival resources that are available at the Disciple Historical Society, and also, of course, at the library as well.